Hello and welcome. I hope you're safe and well. In today's exciting episode, I finished the vintage red and white daisy dress, and I get out the other red and white dress and compare the two.
It's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect jacket.
The last episode, I made the dress at the end of You've Got Mail, that movie that Meg Ryan wears, the light grey one. It's absolutely adorable. But then I also made a green one because I would wear that. And I also made the red and white one. It's white with red vintage daisy print on it, because daisies are her favourite flower. Anyway, I didn't have time to add the last tier of the skirt, the big 8-yard loop of fabric. So I finally finished that, and here it is. I just had to pin the two layers together, pleat them down, and then machine sew it, and then you machine sew it twice so that it's reinforced. It's a little longer than the average vintage dress, but it's still vintage in length, so mid-calf. The technical way of working out whether a dress is vintage or not is, I just think it's by the way it looks, but the technical way is for Dior New Lo'k, that particular collection from 1949, all the dresses were at least 12 inches or 30 centimetres off the ground. So last episode I said I would, once I'd finished this, I would compare this one. This is the McCall's bodice. I would compare this one to the other red dress I have that's vintage. It's also got a 3-tier skirt. This one I made using the Butterick 6677, and this is me just showing you that it has 3 tiers. So this one was made out of 4 yards of fabric, and then the daisy one I actually had 5 yards of that fabric, but I've got one bit of fabric left. So here it is. It's a long strip. I had 5 yards of it, but I've got that strip. And the red strip beside it is 1 yard of fabric cut into 8 strips. And it's kind of the same as that 5-yard bit there. So I'd say this daisy dress has probably 4 yards of fabric. If you had 4 yards of quilting cotton, then you could get a dress that looks like this in a smaller size. Just add a half yard or a full yard or 2 yards to whatever your normal amount of fabric is that you buy for a present day, like a contemporary dress. A vintage dress usually takes, so for a standard dress I usually need 3 yards, 2 yards for a smaller one, but if I'm making a vintage dress it's pretty much always 4 or 5 yards, just because they've got such big full skirt. Oh, and here I got out my vintage netted petticoat, so it makes the dresses sit out. And this is what it looks like under the red one. And then I'm about to swap the mannequins so that I can show you what it looks like under the daisy one. And just ignore the pink fabric on the desk. I'm working out the next layer cake dress. And so I got out all the layer cake ones again and put them out. And I just put the pink over them so that, yeah, totally disguised. You can't see them. So this is what the daisy one looks like without the sides pinned up. And that's what the red one looks like with the sides pinned up. So the red one is Butterick 6677, but I cropped it. And the white one is the McCall's bodice, but I actually lengthened that by 5 centimetres, so about 2 inches. And then this is what it looks like with the net petticoat under the white dress with the vintage daisies on it. It looks so adorable, but the skirt is a little longer than the red one. The red one sits better, it sits out and looks more vintage in that stereotypical way, whereas this one is probably more what an actual vintage dress would have looked like. So I like both of them. Oh, and yes, that is a real velvet. The flowers and foliage are woven into the actual weave of the velvet, and I bought it from a European designer fabric store. Any large city, if you just go to them, they don't tend to have good websites. They tend to be more exclusive, like you actually have to go in and purchase them, the fabrics, because they're they're expensive, but I think they're a good investment. Also, with the really expensive fabrics, you do want to touch them and feel them and make sure that they're the quality they say they are before you purchase them, in my opinion. So, yeah. There's quite a few in New York that are good. Paris is great. All the big cities. Anyway, so yeah, I have a little bit left over of both of these red and white fabrics, and I also have that darker red fabric. So I guess I'll turn them into a dress, but I've got a bunch of other ones that I've got to get to first. And then once I've done these ones here, there's like 10 that are the next ones. And then once I've done them, I will start on something else. The one I'm working on at the moment is the orange and pink one, which is looking a lot more grown up than I thought it would. I thought it was going to look really cute, and I was worried that it was going to be a bit too cutesy, but it's actually quite mature and grown up, she says, sounding disappointed. No, it's still cute, but it's different than I thought it would be. Maybe once I add the bodice in that plaid fabric, it will look more cutesy. Or maybe I'll put a line of the pink across it or something. I'm not sure. Anyway, it is once again going to be a 3 layers skirt in the dress. So I tore up all the fabrics because they're quilting cottons. So you can just measure them, make a cut, and then just tear them. So it's going to be 2 yards, 4 yards, 8 yards. And then after that one, I think I'll do the brown one with green bits in it, because that one is, I also cut and measured all those bits as well. I think that one's going to be absolutely adorable and completely different from everything else that I have. So that's why I want to get to that one soon. Also, it's a bit autumny, I think. So anyway, I made my dress, and that's pretty much the entire video. I have started making the layer cake dress for the next, it'll probably be Tuesday's video. So on Sunday, it's going to be, because I want to make the daisies are a favourite flower, and I've got this grey fabric with daisies on it, and I want to make a jacket out of that, but I still haven't decided which pattern. These two I haven't tried yet. They're very vintage and adorable, so I'm going to make mock-ups out of them. And I've also got these two, the summer reversible jackets that I made back in June or July, and these is them here. And I've also got the Berta 6123. So I like the 3 that I've already made, but I feel like I should do a couple more mock-ups. So you'll see one of those on Sunday, then a dress on Tuesday, then another mock-up probably on Thursday, and then the actual jacket that I make, I'm thinking. But anyway, here's my lovely vintage dress. I do think if you wanted tips on making your dresses look more vintage, I do think the 3-tier skirt makes it look so completely vintage. I think a slightly more cropped bodice, also that at the natural waist rather than a modern dress having it closer to the hips, makes it look like a more present day dress. So if you trying to make it more vintage, fully lining the bodice also makes it look more vintage, because the weight of the skirt is shared between you, effectively having 2 bodices, the outer bodice and the lining bodice, and it's twice as much bodice to carry the weight of the skirt. So the skirt looks weightless. You probably can't tell that that's what you're noticing, but that is something that your eye picks up without you knowing it. I always line my bodices anyway. I've got 2 freckles on my torso that look like a giant snake bite. I read on social media today that it's Snake Bite Awareness Day. So there you go. Now you're aware that I have freckles that look like a giant snake bite. I'm not sure how useful that is, but PSA done. I also think dresses look more vintage when you use quilting cotton rather than like a cotton lawn, one of the thinner cottons, cotton poplin or cotton lawn. They just sort of sit out and the skirts look much fuller. So I definitely recommend that. Also, I know a lot of women hate sleeveless tops and sleeveless dresses, But a vintage dress is because they're probably a bit bigger and a bit harder to move in than the average dress that you wear. I do think making it sleeveless is sensible, and then just make a matching bolero, or a little crocheted cardigan over the top, or a mohair cardigan. Just makes it look so vintage, and that way your arms are still covered, but you get more, like, it's easier to move in a sleeveless dress than a dress with sleeves. But for me, it also means that in winter I can wear a shirt or a long sleeve t-shirt underneath. That's another thing I do with dresses. If I really love the style of a dress, but it's more revealing than something I would normally wear, then I just wear a plain old t-shirt underneath, and you still get the silhouette of a beautiful vintage dress, but it's like dressed down with the t-shirt underneath, and you can't, it's not revealing at all. So yeah, but vintage dresses are just so much fun. I love them to bits. Anyway, there you go. That's the video. I hope you've been inspired to make yourself a vintage dress, because they're so twirlable and they're just so much fun. And they're actually pretty simple to make. If you have a pattern for a pullover dress, like the Butterick 6677, all you have to do is trace out the bodice front and the bodice back, then cut out 2 of those, one for the outer bodice, one for the lining. And then with the rest of your fabric, the remains of almost completely 4 yards. I mean, it depends whether you're using a fashion width fabric, which is wide, or quilting cotton width fabric, which is narrow. But yeah, just get a bit of paper and draw out the dimensions of your fabric, and it's pretty easy to work out, okay, this section will be the bodice, this section will be the top tier, and then all the big strips that I need for the bottom 2 tiers, I'll cut them out this way. Anyway, that is really it for this video. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Make a vintage dress. Make a vintage dress. They're adorable. Have a lovely weekend and happy sewing.